Hello readers, welcome back to Nutan's library. Friends, after eliminating the trivial many, now it's turn to execute the vital few, and that too effortlessly. Once you have figured out which activities and efforts to keep in your life, you have to have a system for executing them. You can't wait until that closet is bursting at the seams and then take superhuman efforts to purge it. You have to have a system in place so that keeping it neat becomes routine and effortless. While non-essentialists tend to force execution, essentialists invest the time they have saved by eliminating the non-essentials into designing a system to make execution almost effortless. It is human nature to want to do easy things, but we need to learn how to make executing the right things, the essential things, as easy and frictionless as possible. So first execution technique is create a buffer. Friends, we live in an unpredictable world. Even apart from extreme events such as famines, we face the unexpected constantly. We do not know whether the traffic will be clear or congested. We do not know if our flight will be delayed or cancelled. We do not know if we'll slip on a slick road tomorrow and break our wrist. Similarly, in the workplace, we do not know if a supplier will be late, or a colleague will drop the ball, or a client will change his or her directions at the 11th hour, and so on. The only thing we can expect is the unexpected. Therefore, we can either wait for the moment and react to it, or we can prepare. We can create a buffer. Friends, a buffer can be defined literally as something that prevents two things from coming into contact and harming each other. For example, a buffer zone at the periphery of a protected environmental area is an area of land that is used to create extra space between that area and any potential threats that might infiltrate it. Similarly, we can reduce the friction of executing the essential in our work and lives simply by creating a buffer. In our lives, we get busy and distracted, and before we know it, the project is due. The day of the big presentation has arrived, no matter how much extra time we built in. As a result, we are forced to swerve or slam on the brakes at the last minute. A non-essentialist always assumes that the best case scenario will happen, forces execution at the last minute. We all know those people who chronically underestimate how long something will really take. This will just take 5 minutes, or I'll be finished with that project by Friday. Yet, inevitably, these things take longer. Something unexpected comes up, or the task ends up being more involved than anticipated, or the estimate was simply too optimistic in the first place. When this happens, they are left reacting to the problem, and results inevitably suffer. Perhaps they pull an all-nighter to make it happen. Perhaps they cut corners, hand in an incomplete project, or worse, fail to get it done at all. Or perhaps they leave someone else on the team to pick up the slack. Either way, they fail to execute at their highest level. But an essentialist builds in a buffer for unexpected events, practices extreme and early preparation. The essentialist looks ahead. She plans. She prepares for different contingencies. She expects the unexpected. She creates a buffer to prepare for the unforeseen, thus giving herself some wiggle room when things come up, as they inevitably do. The way of the essentialist is to use the good times to create a buffer for the bad. It provides a cushion against the unknown future scenarios. So how can we create buffer? Number 1. use extreme preparation. It's true that we cannot predict the unexpected, and therefore the only thing we can do is prepare better. Extreme preparedness helps us to thrive under extreme and difficult circumstances. Number 2. Add 50% to your time estimate. Have you ever underestimated how long a task will take? That's called planning fallacy. It refers to people's tendency to underestimate how long a task will take, even when they have actually done the task before. Social pressure is one of the reasons why we underestimate the time a certain task will take. Often we actually know we can't do things in a given time frame, but we don't want to admit it to someone. Whatever the reasons, the result is that we tend to be later than we say we will be. Later to meetings, later to deliver things at work, later in paying our bills, and so on. Thus, execution becomes frustrating when it could have been frictionless. The way out is simply to add a 50% buffer to the amount of time we estimate. Let's say if you have an hour set aside for a conference call, block off an additional 30 minutes. If everything is perfect, the extra found time feels like a bonus. Number 3. Conduct scenario planning. We can apply these 5 questions to our own attempts at building buffers. Think of the most important project you are trying to get done at work or at home. Then ask the following 5 questions. What risks do you face on this project? What is the worst case scenario? What would the social effects of this be? What would the financial impact of this be? And how can you invest to reduce risks or strengthen financial or social resilience? Your answer to that 5th and crucial question will point you to buffers. Perhaps adding another 20% to the project's budget, or getting a PR person on board to handle any potential negative press, or calling a board meeting to manage shareholder expectations that you can create to safeguard you against unknowable events. Subtract. Bring forth more by removing obstacles. Friends, here we need to take care of the constraints or the obstacles that hold the whole system back. What is the slowest hiker in your job or your life? What is the obstacle that is keeping you back from achieving what really matters to you? By systematically identifying and removing this constraint, you'll be able to significantly reduce the friction keeping you from executing what is essential. But this can't be done in a haphazard way. Simply finding things that need fixing here and there might lead to marginal short-term improvements at best. At worst, you'll waste time and effort improving things that don't really matter. But if you really want to improve the overall functioning of the system, whether that system is a manufacturing process, a procedure in your department, or some routine in your daily life, you need to identify the slowest hiker. A non-essentialist approaches execution in a reactive, haphazard manner. Because the non-essentialist is always reacting to crises rather than anticipating them, he is forced to apply quick fix solutions. Being good with a hammer, the non-essentialist thinks everything is a nail. Thus, he applies more and more pressure. But this ends up only adding more friction and frustration. Indeed, in some situations, the harder you push on someone, the harder he or she will push back. Essentialists, on the other hand, don't default to band-aid solutions. Instead of looking for the most obvious or immediate obstacles, they look for the ones slowing down progress. They ask, what is getting in the way of achieving what is essential? While the non-essentialist is busy applying more and more pressure and piling on more and more solutions, the essentialist simply makes a one-time investment in removing obstacles. This approach goes beyond just solving problems. It's a method of reducing your efforts to maximize your results. Now, how can we subtract things? You see, instead of focusing on the efforts and resources we need to add, the essentialist focuses on the constraints or obstacles we need to remove. But how? What all we can do? Number 1, be clear about the essential intent. We can't know what obstacles to remove until we are clear on the desired outcome. When we don't know what we are really trying to achieve, all change is arbitrary. So ask yourself, how will we know when we are done? Remember, this is deliberately a precise outcome, not a vague one. Number 2, identify the slowest hiker. Ponder over the question, what is the obstacle that, if removed, would make the majority of other obstacles disappear? There are often multiple obstacles to achieving any essential intent. However, at any one time, there is only one priority. Removing arbitrary obstacles can have no effect whatsoever if the primary one still doesn't budge. Number 3, remove the obstacle. Removing obstacles does not have to be hard or take a superhuman effort. Instead, we can start small. It's kind of like dislodging a boulder at the top of a hill. All it takes is a small shove. Then momentum will naturally build. Skill number 3, progress. Realize the power of small wins. The way of the non-essentialist is to go big on everything, to try to do it all, have it all, fit it all in. She goes for the flashiest wins. The non-essentialist operates under the false logic that the more he strives, the more he will achieve. But the reality is, the more we reach for the stars, the harder it is to get ourselves off the ground. The way of the essentialist is different. Instead of trying to accomplish it all and all at once and flaring out, the essentialist starts small and celebrates small acts of progress. Instead of going for the big, flashy wins that don't really matter, the essentialist pursues small and simple wins in areas that are essential. So what are the ways to see progress? Number 1, focus on minimal viable progress. You see, it's a false idea that to do something big we have to start big. Research has shown that of all forms of human motivation, the most effective one is progress. Why is it so? Because a small concrete win creates momentum and affirms our faith in our further success. Everyday progress, even a small win, can make all the difference in how people feel and perform. Of all the things that can boost emotions, motivation, and perceptions during a workday, the single most important thing is making progress in meaningful work. Instead of starting big and then flaring out with nothing to show for it, other than time and energy wasted, to really get essential things done, we need to start small and build momentum. Then we can use that momentum to work toward the next win and the next one, and so on, until we have a significant breakthrough. And when we do, our progress will have become so frictionless and effortless that the breakthrough will seem like overnight success. So start small, encourage progress, and celebrate small wins. Number 2, do the minimal viable preparation. You can start early and small, or start late and big. Take a goal or deadline you have coming up and ask yourself, what is the minimal amount I could do right now to prepare? Let's say you have a big presentation coming up over the next few weeks or months. Open a file right now and spend 4 minutes starting to put down any ideas. Then close the file. No more than 4 minutes, just start it. Number 3. Visually reward progress. There is something powerful about visibly seeing progress toward a goal. Don't be above applying the same technique to your own essential goals, at home or at work. When we start small and reward progress, we end up achieving more than when we set big, lofty, and often impossible goals. And as a bonus, the act of positively reinforcing our successes allows us to reap more enjoyment and satisfaction out of the process. Know the genius of routine. Friends, when you visualize the perfect race in your mental routine, winning is just a natural extension. Everything executes on autopilot. It's like you are in a flow. The way of the non-essentialist is to think the essentials only get done when they are forced. That execution is a matter of raw effort alone. You labor to make it happen. You push through. The way of the essentialist is different. The essentialist designs a routine that makes achieving what you have identified as essential the default position. Yes, in some instances, an essentialist still has to work hard, but with the right routine in place, each effort yields exponentially greater results. Now, how shall we get into this flow? Number 1, make it look easy. Friends, routine is one of the most powerful tools for removing obstacles. Without routine, the pull of non-essential distractions will overpower us. But if we create a right routine that enshrines the essentials, we'll begin to execute them on autopilot. Instead of our consciously pursuing the essential, it will happen without our having to think about it. We won't have to expend precious energy every day prioritizing everything. We must simply expend a small amount of initial energy to create the routine, and then all that is left to do is to follow it. With repetition, the routine is mastered and the activity becomes second nature. Once what you do is a part of routine, the brain can almost completely shut down. And this is a real advantage, you see, because it means you have all of this mental activity you can devote to something else. The right routines can actually enhance innovation and creativity by giving us the equivalent of an energy rebate. When I say right routines, we need to discard the routines that keep us locked in non-essential habits and replace them with routines that make executing essentials almost effortless. Number 2, overhaul your triggers. Friends, get into this loop. Cue, routine, reward. Cue, routine, reward becomes more automatic as the cue and reward become neurologically intertwined. What this means is that if we want to change our routine, we don't really need to change the behavior. Rather, we need to find the cue that is triggering the non-essential activity or behavior and find a way to associate that same cue with something that is essential. For example, if the bakery you pass on the way home from work triggers you to pick up a donut, next time you pass by that bakery, use that cue to remind you to pick up a salad from across the street. At first, overcoming the temptation to stop at the bakery will be difficult, but each time you execute the new behavior, each time you pick up the salad, it strengthens the link in your brain between the cue and the new behavior. And soon you'll be subconsciously and automatically performing the new routine. Number 3, create new triggers. If the goal is to create some behavioral change, we are not just confined to our existing cues. We can create brand new ones to trigger the execution of some essential routine. Number 4, do the most difficult thing first. Use the tips above to develop a routine of doing your hardest task in the day first thing in the morning. Find a cue, whether it's that first glass of orange juice you have at your desk, or an alarm you set on your cell phone, or anything you are already accustomed to doing first thing in the morning, to trigger you to sit down and focus on your hardest thing. Number 5. Mix up your routines. Friends, it's true that doing the same things at the same time day after day can get boring. To avoid this kind of routine fatigue, there is no reason why you can't have different routines for different days of the week. Number 6. Tackle your routines one by one. Friends, as discussed earlier, to get big results, we must start small. So start with one change in your daily or weekly routine and then build on your progress from there. Doing these things with routines are never easy. Many of our non-essential routines are deep and emotional. They have been formed in the furnace of some strong emotions. The idea that we can just snap our fingers and replace them with a new one is naive. Learning essential new skills is never easy. But once we master them and make them automatic, we have won an enormous victory, because the skill remains with us for the rest of our lives. The same is true with routines. Once they are in place, they are gifts that keep on giving. Skill number 5. Focus on what's important now. In practical terms, we only ever have now. We can't control the future in a literal sense, just the now. Of course, we learn from the past and can imagine the future. Yet, only in the here and now can we actually execute on the things that really matter. Non-essentialists tend to be so preoccupied with past successes and failures, as well as future challenges and opportunities, that they miss the present moment. They become distracted, unfocused. They aren't really there. The way of the essentialist is to tune into the present, to focus on the things that are truly important, not yesterday or tomorrow, but right now. Essentialists live their whole lives in this manner, and because they do, they can apply their full energy to the job at hand. They don't diffuse their efforts with distractions. They know that execution is easy if you work hard at it, and hard if you work easy at it. Moreover, a true essentialist never attempts to do more than one thing at a time. Well, we can do multitasking. What we can't do is concentrate on two things at the same time. Being in the here and now means being focused on one thing at a time. Multitasking itself is not the enemy of essentialism. Pretending we can multi-focus is. So friends, how to be in the now? Number 1. Figure out what is most important right now. When faced with so many tasks and obligations that you can't figure out which to tackle first, stop. Take a deep breath. Get present in the moment and ask yourself what is most important this very second. Not what's most important tomorrow or even an hour from now. If you aren't sure, make a list of everything vying for your attention and cross off anything that is not important right now. Number 2. Get the future out of your head. Getting the future out of your head enables you to more fully focus on what's important now. Number 3. Prioritize. Work on each item on the what is essential now. Just calmly work through the list and erase each item when it is complete. Friends, training yourself to tune into the here and now will not only enable you to achieve a higher level of contribution, but also make you happier. Skill number 6. Be an essentialist. Friends, we can all purge our lives of the non-essential and embrace the way of the essentialist in our own ways and in our own time and on our own scale. We can all live a life not just of simplicity, but of high contribution and meaning. How to live essentially? Friends, there are two ways of thinking about essentialism. The first is to think of it as something you do occasionally. The second is to think of it as something you are. In the former, essentialism is one more thing to add to your already overstuffed life. In the latter, it is a different way, a simpler way of doing everything. It becomes a lifestyle. It becomes an all-encompassing approach to living and leading. It becomes the essence of who we are. Practice the testimony of simplicity in which you commit to a life of only what is essential. We can see the philosophy of less but better reflected in the lives of other notable and diverse figures throughout history. To name a few, Dalai Lama, Steve Jobs, Leo Tolstoy, Michael Jordan, Warren Buffett, and Mother Teresa. All these personalities, they share one trait. They don't just give lip service to the idea of less but better. They have deliberately chosen to fully embrace the way of the essentialist. Regardless of what job, field, or industry we are in, we can all choose to do the same. Now friends, having learnt all the skills we need to know how to use those skills in being a true essentialist. You see, most of us have a little essentialist and a little non-essentialist in us. But the question is, which are you at the core? People with essentialism at their core get far more from their investment than those who absorb it only at the surface level. Indeed, the benefits become cumulative. Every choice we make to pursue the essential and eliminate the non-essential builds on itself, making that choice more and more habitual until it becomes virtually second nature. With time, that inner core expands outwards until it has all but eclipsed the part of us still mired in the non-essential. Friends, don't get caught up in the paradox of success. The way of the essentialist isn't just about success, it's about living a life of meaning and purpose. When we look back on our careers and our lives, would we rather see a long laundry list of accomplishments that don't really matter, or just a few major accomplishments that have real meaning and significance? If you allow yourself to fully embrace essentialism, to really live it in everything you do, whether at home or at work, it can become a part of the way you see and understand the world. You can change your thinking so deeply that the practices of essentialism we have discussed and many others you will develop become natural and instinctive. Once you become an essentialist, you'll find that you aren't like everybody else. When other people are saying yes, you will find yourself saying no. When other people are doing, you'll find yourself thinking. When other people are speaking, you'll find yourself listening. When other people are in the spotlight, vying for attention, you'll find yourself waiting on the sidelines until it is time to shine. While other people are padding their resumes and building out their LinkedIn profiles, you'll be building a career of meaning. While other people are complaining about how busy they are, you'll just be smiling sympathetically, unable to relate. While other people are living a life of stress and chaos, you'll be living a life of impact and fulfillment. In many ways, to live as an essentialist in our too many things all the time society is an act of quiet revolution. Friends, once you start living the essentialist way, you'll see that the life of an essentialist is a life of meaning. It is a life that really matters. But yes, this is also true that transition doesn't happen overnight. Becoming an essentialist is a long process, but the benefits are endless. Try to be an essentialist by choice. You'll find that it is incredibly liberating. It will bring more clarity of purpose, more control, and above it all, more joy in the journey. Remember this: whatever decision or challenge or crossroads you face in your life, simply ask yourself, what is essential? Eliminate everything else.